And I think just when you get that first, second passport, there's a great sense of now I can really choose my path. It doesn't matter that, Trump said this or this guy said that. Now I have some options.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits on the other side, right? Like, let's say you've gone through this process or you're about to embark on this process that can be difficult, that can be time intensive, money intensive. What are the benefits that people can look forward to on the other side that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I think number one, it's a personal freedom, right? I think you always want to have options. And I think what we're seeing is some countries are, getting out of hand. They're restricting your travel. Some countries aren't letting you out. Some countries, the passport has become worthless. And so I think this whole COVID situation has been a wake-up call for who knows what could happen. But also look at the situation where, and I've had folks tell me before, they left Bulgaria to go to the United States, and now they feel like maybe they did it wrong. They gave up Bulgarian to become American, and they feel like today they would have done the reverse. The world changes. And so being prepared, one of the big things that we focus on is from a financial perspective. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're going to be taxed, you're going to be regulated, you're going to be filing tax returns and reports and reporting your foreign companies and reporting your foreign bank accounts for as long as you're a U.S. citizen. Doesn't matter. I spent years outside of the U.S., not one day back in the country. I had to do all that stuff. And it's not just a matter of taxes, because you can dramatically reduce the amount of taxes that you pay being overseas. But it's an issue of when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act came out, people in the UK who were already paying a boatload of taxes suddenly had an additional tax from the US because the tax system within the US never plays nicely with other countries' tax systems. And so some people say, you know what? I either want a plan B citizenship to where if it ever becomes too difficult, I'm going to bail on the US, or I'm just going to do it right now. Now, I think other countries are going to start to do that. We've seen Canada, Australia, France, and others. China is doing it. China is taxing their own citizens living in Hong Kong now. South Africa is basically talking about it, and they're moving in that direction. So imagine, you're Canadian, and there's a member of parliament saying, if you go and live in Dubai, you should still pay us. I think it's an insurance policy against the financial policies, because look at what's happening with the whole COVID situation. Look at what's happening where, these countries are taking out trillions of dollars. $11 trillion, I think, is the global number, and growing on how much money just invented. Look at what's happened to the US dollar just in the last month. It's been on a free fall against major currencies. And so how do you think they're going to fix that? Well, do you think that the tiny percentage of people who live overseas and live tax-friendly lifestyles running businesses on e-commerce are very politically, sympathetic? No, they're not. So they'll say, you know what, we're going to tax you. And I think you're going to see more countries doing that to make up the money because nobody will care. And so if I'm Canadian or Australian or whatever else, I'm going to want an insurance policy against my government coming to me to pay for the bill. Forget raising taxes domestically. They're going to make it to where you can't even leave and go and live somewhere else the way Americans have had it for years. And so I think for me, that's the big reason. Obviously, again, speaking to people who are high earners and have a high wealth, I think wealth taxes are another thing that they'll introduce. But freedom of travel. I'll also give you one reason that was for me. I just didn't like being an American. And I never liked using an American passport to get into countries. I always felt, people were judging me and that. It's hard to open bank accounts. Certain investments you can't make if you're in the crypto business. A lot of people don't want Americans. So, it's just a matter of having the choice. You have the choice, right? You can be a Bulgarian, you can be American. You're at home in two cultures, and you can benefit from both cultures. And being Bulgarian, you have the whole European Union. So I think it's just about having options because governments are going to become increasingly crazy, and you want a protection against that. And by the way, I'll tell you one more thing. I have people who come to me and say, I'm Canadian, but I want my kids to be able to grow up in Europe. And I want them to be able to go to schools in Europe and have that lifestyle and have the option. And I don't want to have to rely on what will be the policies then. I want my kids to have that option to work and study. By the way, I had a couple of guys who renounced that came back to the U.S. and gave birth to their kids. Because if you're born in the U.S., you're a U.S. citizen. So they wanted their kids to be able to grow up with a formerly American father and then be able to go back and work if they wanted to. So that's also something that's important.
Yeah, and I mean, I think just in general, having multiple citizenships like does make you literally a global citizen. You know, like
Mm.
you start. I think the way that you start thinking is different. You know, like you suddenly can make investments in other countries, right? Like you can kind of participate in different parts of the world, and
Sure.
I think also having citizenship and being able to spend longer amounts of time in different places does make you open to. This is something that I've talked with friends before. Is like some of the things that are discussed on the fringe don't happen back home. You know what I mean? Like these, like I have a friend who heard about Bitcoin very early on because he was in like Bangkok and there were people who were discussing it and he got in early on it, right? Made lots of money from it. These were discussions that weren't having that, you know, people
Right.
weren't having back in the US. So it kind of opens you up to new things.
Most people who live and where they're from, I mean, it's not a very intentional lifestyle necessarily. I mean, certainly not to say everyone who lives where they're from is not living intentionally, but when you force yourself to be out in a different environment and you force this to open up, you know, one thing I talk about when people say, what's the first step to becoming a global citizen? I said, go open a bank account in some other country, even if it's $1, because you're going to then not only go there and see how it's not as bad as you thought it was. Speaking of Armenia, I've sent a few friends there and they said, this place isn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. This is actually pretty nice. And then you'll go and you'll log on 6 months later, you'll remember you put $100 there and you'll see the $100 is still there. And you'll say, oh, that's interesting. This isn't, my money hasn't evaporated. And I think when you look at dual citizenship, now you have two options. You know, how many people, when they have a relationship that's not serving them, they feel stuck because they don't know where to go next. Right? And how many people feel stuck in their own country, or they feel that the government's becoming more oppressive, or they feel they can't go where they want, they can't do what they want, they can't work where they want. I mean, your citizenship is what defines so many important aspects of your life. And so if you don't have two options, you're always stuck with one. And I think just when you get that first, second passport, there's a great sense of now I can really choose my path. It doesn't matter that Trump said this or this guy said that, and now I have some options.
And I think you start thinking bigger as well. Like you stop paying attention to the micro things,
Right. Well, and so my big thing is don't stay and fight. Go where you're treated best. Those are the 5 magic words, right? Go where you're treated best. And so for me, if something is not serving me, I'm not going to stay and fix it. I mean, the United States, for example, you've got 330 million people. Your vote is the drop in the ocean. It makes no difference. And, for our entire lives, people have been saying, this next election is the most important election in our life. This is going to determine the future of everything. And how long do you have to get to sit around? I watch some of these guys, who are angry that, they can't find women to date them in their community, or they're angry about this, or they're angry about that, or they're angry about Obama, or they're angry about Trump. When you have multiple citizenships, when you have options around the world, you can go and date women in the best places where, to date women. I promise you there's a place where you'll find women or men who get along with you. I promise you there's a place where you will feel like you fit in. I promise you there's a place where they share your values, because places like Bulgaria, Georgia, that they've seen what happens when you go down the road some of these Western countries are going down. They don't want to go there anymore, right? And so you can find what you're looking for anywhere. And I think so many people, they wave the flag because they don't have another option. They don't know how to get another option, and this is all they have, and they have to stand. This is the hill they must die on. And I don't want to be dying on a hill. I just want peace and calm in my life. I just want to go where I'm treated best. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.